it's Jazz at Red Panda Reads, and I read a book. I know, right? A booktuber read a book? Shocking. It is actually pretty shocking. I have been in a massive reading slump for the last 2 months. I have found it really hard to find the motivation to start reading a book, and I wanted to, which is the weird thing, but just every time I tried, for whatever reason, I couldn't get into it, and I just have all these other thoughts going on in my mind, and I couldn't concentrate and couldn't enjoy it until this week. I am so happy to say that this week I have not read one, but I have read 2 books, and I have really, really enjoyed it, and I'm hoping that has given me the spark back to read again. And so what I wanted to do today is talk to you about those 2 books, because that's why I'm here, and also discuss a audiobook that I've been listening to over the last few months and also really enjoyed, and just have a really fun chatty video about books. So let us begin. I've also got 2 little mascots with me to keep me company. Jesper, named after Jesper from the Crooked Kingdom, and 6 of Crows, which I'm going to be talking about in this video. And then I've got little Chota, who is from a little panda that I adopted at Bristol Zoo, who's sadly no longer with us, but he is still with me. He's adorable. So, oh, sorry. So the first book I want to talk to you about, and I think it's the book that really sparked that interest and love of reading again, is The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. I saw Sam talking about this book in a recent reading vlog she did on Griff's Reads, and I've tried so many times to read it. I'd read the first few pages again and again, and I just couldn't keep turning them. And then that vlog gave me kind of the push to actually get there and start reading it, and I'm so glad I did. So The Bone Season is a paranormal fantasy book set in an alternative reality. It starts off with our main character Paige, who is a young woman who works for a gang on the streets of London, and she and the other gang members have an ability known as clairvoyance, which is illegal within this world, and people who have these magical abilities are hunted and persecuted. And she, early on in the book, gets captured by the people who are hunting clairvoyance, and she gets taken somewhere. And this book follows her as she finds out exactly what happens to clairvoyance, why they are being hunted and persecuted. And a theme that it discusses a lot within this book is what is freedom and how different people perceive freedom in different ways. For example, some people may consider their ability to use magical powers whenever they want as freedom, whereas other people may think as long as they can, you know, travel, move around, have no limitations on their ability to get somewhere and do stuff, if they have to hide said magical power, that's fine. So I found that incredibly interesting, and I also empathised so much with our main character. I think because she is a young woman and they very much explore her path as well, from childhood to being kind of 18 and the raw emotion of heartbreak. You really felt that she was just like you and I. This book also discussed contraception, which I adore being discussed in books. Very briefly, but any little bits. This just mentioned a pill, a fantasy book I read a while ago mentioned the coil. Ah, beautiful. But it also had that, and it was also a really fast-paced, action-filled book, which is something I needed. I didn't want a slow burn at the moment. I just wanted something fast and fun and exciting, and this book gave me that. And it also had that intrigue and mystery and magic, which is something I've always enjoyed reading. What I will say is, although I really enjoyed this book, the plot wasn't anything groundbreaking, and I have seen kind of within it the love interest has kind of been done. It's been done a lot, and I felt a little uncomfortable with kind of the power dynamic and power imbalance, but that didn't stop me enjoying it. I also want to say that I found the magic system quite hard to understand. It was quite soft. The rules were not clear at all. And being a massive lover of Brandon Sanderson, I think I have been spoiled for my magic systems, and it was a bit of a shock to read a new magic system that seemed a little bit more kind of fluffy. That being said, I think I need to sit down and read exactly what all of the kind of different clairvoyances can do, which it has at the front, because I think understanding that, and therefore understanding, it would allow me to understand kind of fights better and what's going on, rather than just kind of being like, oh cool, she did this thing, that happened, right. The other thing that I felt was a little bit off with this book was the pacing. So as I said, it seemed really fast pacing, which was something I loved. But for me, it felt like this book happened over like 5 days, whereas I think it happened over about 6 months. And I didn't get that feeling. So for me, some of the relationships that formed and kind of the reactions between different characters didn't quite make sense to me. There are 2 more books, I believe, in this series, and then the novella, which I mentioned. The novella is actually in the back of here, and I'm going to definitely read that. And although this book does leave you with a lot of unanswered questions, I'm not burning to read the next ones yet. I just read this, I enjoyed it, I couldn't put it down, but I don't have like a burning desire to find out what happens next, because I'm just like, okay, I'm happy with everything that's happened in this book. But I'd like to know your opinion on that, and I really want to kind of thank this book for just giving me a lot of joy, and I really enjoyed it. The next book I want to talk about is an audio tape, and it is another fantasy book, and that is The Crooked Kingdom, which is the second book by Leigh Bardugo in the Six of Crows duology. And my little friend here, Jesper, is named after Jesper from that duology, and I'm just, I was taken aback by how much I loved it. So I was a bit disappointed by Six of Crows. I think it'd been really hyped up, and although I enjoyed the heist plot and I enjoyed the characters all as individuals, I felt all the relationships were very forced, with the exception of Nina and Matthias. And I just like wasn't really rooting for Kaz or Inej, and just Wylan almost seemed just like an extra addition that didn't seem that kind of almost relevant to the book. But all those reservations I had were within minutes of listening to The Crooked Kingdom had gone, and I thought it was an absolutely phenomenal fantasy book. So Six of Crows, the first in the series, is basically a massive heist novel set in a fantasy world, mostly based in Ketterdam, where you have a bunch of kids working for a gang, and they go and break into a massive fortress and end up getting into a lot of trouble with the very powerful people in the city, and the Crooked Kingdom carries on from that point. And again, it is another heist book. There is lots of intrigue, there is lots of oh damn moments, lots of times when you think no way they're going to get out of this. But what made this novel so fantastic was not just the fun heist aspects, but the relationships between the characters, between the lovers, between the friends, between the family. Early on, Jesper, our gunslinger character, he meets his dad, and he has basically been addicted to gambling, got himself into a ton of debt, and as a result brought his father is now ruined as well. And his father doesn't know this, and that kind of shame that you can see Jesper feeling, and the fact he can't stop gambling despite knowing the effect it had on his father, is just so heartbreaking to see. And his father's kind of reaction and his response to everything is just so beautiful, because yes, what Jesper did wasn't necessarily good, but he's still his son and he still really cares about him, and it was just so beautiful. And then the relationship between Wylan and his father. So Wylan's father is an awful man. He is cruel, he basically is an absolute monster, and Wylan can't see that. He still views him as his dad, and although his dad might have wanted to kill him in the past, like, there was a good reason, because Wyland can't read, so why should he exist? And that's really explored as well. And Wyland realises that there is value to him and that he is a wonderful person, and not being able to read doesn't change that. And that was also superb. I also want to add that Kaz, our main character, has to have a stick to walk around. He is disabled, yet that doesn't stop him from doing what he needs to do. And I think so rarely do you see characters who have a limp or are missing a limb, or, you know, something that in our world we would say puts you at a disadvantage. And I think this book very much shows that it doesn't need to be a disadvantage, and we really need to tackle this kind of ableist world we live in. And I really want to educate myself more in this. I mean, I went to a med school that didn't even have a disabled access via the front, which I think is just disgusting. I just think it's an area that I really want to explore, and kind of the ableist society we live in and how we can tackle that. So I've just ordered a non-fiction book so I can actually talk about that and be more informed. Another thing I love about this duology is the multiple points of views. You get, it's always something I've loved in fantasy books, when you get to see the world through multiple different lenses and hear different people's opinions about all the different characters, especially when you love so many of the characters. And therefore you really got to explore the world and all its beauty and its grime and its, you know, and that was a really engaging way to tell the story. So I would really recommend the duology. I think if you weren't such a fan of Six of Crows like me, definitely read the next book, because it was just beautiful. Be prepared for a bit of heartbreak. It is quite emotional, and the ending really got me, but I'm so glad that I read it. And I think for most people, I think it will just bring you a lot of joy. The last book I want to talk about I read today, and I think it took me about 1 or 2 hours to read. I mean, that sounds impressive, I know. It's not as big as it looks. It is written in verse, and yes, it is Toffee by one of my favourite authors, Crossan. So this is a young adult book, and it's basically about a young girl who runs away from home and just wants to forget who she is, and she ends up living in the house of an elderly woman who has dementia, who thinks our young girl Alison is someone else called Toffee. And so Alison kind of takes on that role and acts as Toffee so she can live with this elderly woman. And throughout this book they basically become really close friends, and Alison begins to really care for this woman, and she helps Alison realise that things aren't her fault, and that she should be valued, and that she is wonderful, and that she deserves so much more than she is getting. And it was just a gorgeous, lyrical, beautiful, heartbreaking book to read. And I loved it. There's something always so raw and like your soul is being kind of shown to the world when you read Crossan's books. And she almost always manages to make me cry as well. I think that shows the beauty of her work and the fact she does deal with really heartbreaking stuff. Yeah, there were certain bits of this book that just got me. So that ending where both had found peace in their different ways, and both will have had a massive effect on each other's lives. There's a bit when someone who Alison kind of knows comes into the house and steals Marla's clock, and kind of timekeeping is something so important for many people who have dementia. So that was also really hard hitting. That bit just went, oh, that bit just got me. And yeah, it's beautiful. I'm still processing everything that happened in here, considering I finished it a couple of hours ago, and I will probably be reflecting on it for some time and then may have more to say. But I'd really recommend her writing, and I loved it. So those are the books that I have read / listened to recently, and I've really enjoyed, and I'm hoping this all inspires me to get back into reading. So we are going to disappear now, and it's been lovely to talk to you all, and I hope very much that you all have a wonderful week and stay safe out there. And it's almost International Red Panda Day, whoop! So I'll be doing something very panda related for that. Take care everyone, bye.